All right, let's just jump right in. Picture this. It's early 2025. President Trump is back and he's bringing his America First policy with him, full throttle. And just like that, almost overnight, the entire world is teetering on the edge of a brand new, very high stakes global trade war.
So this really boils down to one huge question we have to ask. Are these aggressive moves a smart strategy to shield the American economy? Or is it a reckless gamble that could actually shatter the whole global system? I mean, the stakes really could not be higher. Okay, so before we get any deeper, let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing. The main weapon in this whole conflict is the tariff. And what is it? Super simple, really. It's just a tax on goods coming in from other countries. The idea is to make those imported goods more expensive, which, in theory, pushes you to buy stuff made right here at home instead.
So, what's the game plan here? Well, let's break down the playbook. At its heart, the America First doctrine is all about using these tariffs as a giant economic hammer, right? To put a ton of pressure on other countries and basically force them to come to the table and make new deals.
And this quote? It tells you everything you need to know about the thinking behind all this. The whole argument is that for years, the US has been getting a raw deal in global trade, playing by rules that other countries have just been exploiting. So these new policies, from their perspective, are all about leveling that playing field. Now, you might think the first big fight would be with a far-off rival, right? Nope. The first shockwave hit right next door. The trade war kicked off on two fronts at the exact same time, aimed squarely at America's closest allies and two of its biggest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. And here's where you see the two sides just talking completely past each other. On one hand, the US is saying, hey, this is about national security. We need these tariffs to fight illegal immigration and stop fentanyl. But Canada and Mexico, they're looking at this and saying, no way, this has nothing to do with security. This is just an unfair economic attack, and we're going to have to fight back to protect ourselves. And fight back they did. Canada's response wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction, it was surgical. They hit back with a matching 25% tariff, but look at what they targeted. They went right for key U.S. agricultural goods, industrial products from the Rust Belt. This was all designed to maximize political pain. And yeah, they even threw toilet paper in there, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Now, this is where things with Mexico get really telling. Just look at that number, 8,326. That's the number of illegal border arrests after Mexico really stepped up its enforcement at the request of the US. I mean, that is a massive drop. So, problem solved, right? Well, the US went ahead and slapped the tariffs on Mexico anyway. And for a lot of observers, that was the moment they thought, okay, so maybe this was never really about the border to begin with. Okay, now for the heavyweight bout. The showdown with China. This wasn't a new fight, not by a long shot. It was more like round two, just with the fuse relit on all those explosive trade disputes from the first term. And I mean, things escalated fast. Just look at this timeline. On February 4th, bam, a 10% tariff on everything from China. China hits back almost instantly. Then, not even a month later, the US says, you know what, let's make it 20%. And that new tariff goes into effect the very next day. It's just an incredibly rapid escalation. But don't think for a second China was just playing checkers here. Their response was a full-on chess match. Yeah, they matched the tariffs, sure, but then they pulled out the big guns. They started restricting exports of critical minerals that U.S. tech depends on. They put specific American companies on a blacklist, and then they lawyered up, taking the whole fight to the World Trade Organization. So at this point, you've got these major fights going on with the neighbors and with China. But it didn't stop there. The next move was the one that really turned this from a series of disputes into a truly global conflict. And here's how. On March 12th, the administration announced a blanket 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports. And the target? Everyone. I mean, every single country, with no exceptions. So all of a sudden, even the closest U.S. allies were getting caught in the crossfire, all in the name of protecting domestic industry. And if that wasn't enough, a brand new, pretty radical idea gets introduced, the reciprocal tariff. The logic is basically an eye for an eye. If a country charges a 10% tax on American cars, the US will automatically charge a 10% tax on their cars. It's a simple tit-for-tat approach designed to force what the administration calls fair trade. Okay, so we've got all these policies, these tariffs and retaliations flying around, but what does it actually mean? What's the real cost? That's what we're going to get into now, the economic fallout, not just for Wall Street, but for businesses and for everyday people. Wow. I mean, this chart from the Atlanta Fed really says it all. Look at this. before all this started, the U.S. economy was expected to grow by a pretty healthy 2.3%. After the tariffs hit, that forecast completely flips on its head to a negative 2.8% contraction. That's not just a dip, that's a 5-point nosedive from growth straight into recession territory. So what does a number like negative 2.8% GDP actually feel like? Well, let's talk about something real, like buying a car. Take a Honda CR-V, super popular, a lot of them are made in Canada. Before the tariff, it's about 35 grand. Add that new 25% tariff, now you're looking at something closer to $43,000. That's an extra 8 grand right out of your pocket. That's the tariff tax.
So you might be asking, why these specific countries? Why all the focus on China, Mexico, and Canada? This chart lays out the logic pretty clearly. It's all about the trade deficit. The strategy was to target the countries where the U.S. buys way, way more than it sells. And who's at the top of that list? Yep, China and Mexico are numbers 1 and 2. They were always going to be the main targets.
And make no mistake, this isn't just an American problem. The ripples spread everywhere. The World Bank ran the numbers, and their forecast is pretty sobering. They figure a full-scale, escalating trade war could wipe over $326 billion from the global economy. That's a staggering blow that everyone around the world would feel. So, what's the end game here? Why go through all this economic chaos? Well, this social media post spells it out in black and white. The tariffs are basically a giant stick. The goal is to make it so painful and so expensive for companies to manufacture overseas that they have no choice but to pack up and bring those jobs back home to the USA. Plain and simple. And that brings us to the big, unanswered question at the end of all of this. Is all this just short-term pain for long-term gain? Is it a really aggressive, high-stakes negotiation tactic to get better deals for America in the end? Or are we watching the very beginning of the end of the globalized economy that we've known for decades? A fundamental shift to a new world that's more divided, more walled off, and more protectionist. Right now, the answer is still unfolding.